All right, so we're back for the spoiler dump and basically spoiler talk. So obviously, this episode, like I said, was very heavy. It was a very dense little package, right? Within that 1 hour, there's a lot to take away from, like I've been saying in the non-spoiler review. So obviously, yes, the big villain for that episode, so to say, is of course the return of Angstrom Levy. Angstrom Levy it now is in a cyborg form. Yes, we did see him in the very last part of the last previous episode, episode 6, and you got to see all like the multiple marks and stuff like that. Um, it was quite the surprise, I guess, but personally for me, I wished to see something throughout, right? It kind of does the same thing with season 2 with Angstrom Levy, right? And you kind of got to see him from the beginning ish, and then maybe some parts here and there, but it doesn't really, really do a good job stretching out this character to really unfold like all the little nooks and crannies, right, to make him that well-written villain, to that you would engage with like such other villains from other pieces, right? But other such pieces, but for what it is, right? This episode was still great. Not perfect, but great. A lot of marks came through, but it's just it doesn't really explain how they decided to team up with Angstrom, right? Besides the fact that I guess they're villains. They wanted to conquer, and they were promised that they were gonna own their own dimensions, right? It's just not entirely there for me to believe. It's kind of just like, hey, this is what's written. That there you go, right? Kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm felt like, right? What it feels like to me. Like I'm expected to be spoon-fed that, but for what it is, still something to take away from, because either way, it really allows you to see how Earth is prepared, right, for something greater, potentially, right, which is of course the Viltrumites, right, the great Viltrumite versus Earth war, pretty much. That's imminent, right? It's going to happen, right? You definitely can smell it. And but yes, they have these marks, right, that scatter all over the world, and they just cause simultaneous global terrorism, if you will, and they just wreak havoc, destroy a lot of parts of the city, and of course, a lot of lives were lost. And unfortunately, a lot of those lives, those casualties, were superheroes. A number of the superheroes did meet their end. While it does a lot of these twists, right? Like, oh, you thought this guy was dead, but not really. And of course, one of them was Shapesmith. I actually was like, no way, Shapesmith is gonna go out like that. And then it took me a second, like, wait a minute. Because, of course, Shapesmith is a Martian, right? And it was that Martian guy from the very first episode, I believe, from season 1. And then, of course, he was killed along with the old Guardians. And the way he was killed was Omni-Man ripped the core out, right? Because the core likes to move around or whatever as the Martian guy engages his body, right? In order for him to still function or whatever. And then he was able to catch that core and then crush it or rip it out or whatever. And that's how the Martian died. So seeing Shapesmith ripped in half was quite different. I'm like, wait a minute. Is he really dead? So I figured that he's not going to go out like that. And he even explained like how his body works, or along with the other Martians. They have a core. All their important organs are in a core. And so if that core gets ripped out, then they die, essentially. So pretty self-explanatory there, I guess. And gladly he's still around, but he was very hurt, simply put. And of course, Immortal cannot just catch a break. He just never wins his fights. Maybe it's the small victories, right? But whenever a major on-screen fight takes place with Immortal, he always is likely to lose. And he just cannot just catch any W's, like on-screen W's, unfortunately. But I guess he's just that character, right? He's just kind of just there for like a yardstick. Because Immortal is strong. He does have extraordinary abilities, but these villains are there to say, hey, we're a great threat, right? So Immortal is just there to be that measuring stick, a yardstick, right? So they just slap around like nothing in some ways, right? So it's very unfortunate that Immortal is like that character, and then even by the end, he's like, "Yeah, I've had enough. I quit. I'm done with this, man. Screw this." But obviously, they did this tastefully. He wants to start a family with Duplicate. And of course, Kate just says yes. So I thought they were already like engaged, but I guess it's like that next step, right? Like he wants to actually start a family along with being married, right? Because being married doesn't mean you're going to start a family. It's just you're tying the knot, right? But anyway, so Immortal and Kate, yes, they're going to be together and they're going to retire from the Guardians of the Globe. But yes, meanwhile, in that fight alone, Darkwing 2, gets his leg broken, right? He almost died the same exact way the first Darkwing did with Omni-Man. Like when Omni-Man caught Darkwing and then just boom, just splatted him onto the ground like nothing, like a meat bag, right? He just boom. But it seems like, I don't know, either that Mark was weaker or this Darkwing is a lot more durable, right? By comparison. I mean, he just got a broken leg. That's, a lot more durable, right? Than the first one, and then who else? Oh yeah, and then Black Samson. Unfortunately, he was already out, and same with Duplicate, but mostly for the most part, right? Duplicate just got demolished. And then Immortal got his head chopped off. So it's very poetic, right? It's almost like, it's repeating these sort of steps from the first season. Like what George Lucas says, right? It's a poem, it rhymes, there's a rhyme to it, right? So it's kind of like paying homage kind of to Omni-Man almost, right? From the writers. Who else? Oh yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Because that's all the Guardians left at the time. And then of course there was another Mark attacking the team base, and obviously this Mark was ripping them apart, but of course the team were losing. They just cannot fight this Mark. This Mark is just too powerful for them. Bulletproof was the only one who can actually get them out of there, right? Along with Monster Girl and Rudy, or Robot. And Rex, right? He was the one to tell them to go, because it makes more sense. Even though yes, Bulletproof is stronger, he's the strongest one, but he's the one who can fly. Very similar to Mark in a sense, but on a weaker scale, at least for now. Takes them. Rex is essentially the sacrifice. He stays back, tries to hold off against this Mark. I forgot what this Mark will look like. It was a lot of Marks, but Rex does a lot. He just pretty much unfolds everything. He all the tricks in his bag, does everything. Even puts his hands on the ground, boom, right? Uses the entire floor plate to try to blow up Mark, but no avail, and seemingly all in vain. But he already had his rib broken or whatever, and his side opened, right, thanks to Mark. And when this Mark was about to break his neck and stuff like that, rip his head off, whatever, Rex had the last gambit, right? So, as he can touch anything and it blows up, kind of like Gambit, right? God. Anyway, he used his bones to blow himself up, and that somehow was the ticket, I guess. Even though he had a whole thing, I forget if it actually killed him or not, but I think it did, and that's kind of just like, and maybe because his skeleton is actually made out of some special material or something, because, well, the government took him in, so at some point maybe he had to be experimented on. And then of course he was rebuilt as well, that stuff too. And not to mention he had a robot hand and all that stuff. So maybe all those little add-ons and stuff like that add up to, enough, I guess, to at least incapacitate this Mark right here. But ultimately, yes, Rex gave his life so that Robot, Monster Girl, and Bulletproof can escape with their lives. And of course, this was right before Rex and Ray were still, like getting their relationship going, right? Ray was just quit, and she was just about to move in. Rex was helping, and they did their thing, and they're about to just take it to the whole new level, right? But unfortunately, Rex gets cock blocked by the explosion in the background, and of course that was caused by one of the marks or whatever. And Rex said, "Duty calls, right? Gotta go." But Ray, still being a superhero, she wanted to go, but Rex said, "Nah, take the day off, man. Relax. You be the normal girl, right? Just you deserve it, because obviously being a superhero is hard, and for her entire life she had to be a superhero. Never got to have a normal life, and so Rex wanted to give her that, right, before he went." And of course, when Rex did sad sacrifice, it was I'm sorry, like, this was unintentionally funny to me, but seeing a superhero all costumed up and everything, all dripped out, driving like a regular ass car, it's just kind of like, I don't know, just something about that is just funny to me, even though it's supposed to be a very serious thing. Like, I get it, like, she's like an average person at the end of the day who happens to have some superpowers, but she's like, I don't know, seeing that in the middle of like something very serious is just, I don't know, it's just it kind of threw me to a loop. But anyway, she pretty much put the two together right away, that something happened with the teen team, right? With that big explosion. She was already at the bridge, and then they're already at the top. Boom, right? And she's just like, oh, fuck, Of course, meanwhile, everything else, there's so much happening, right? There was one mark that got shredded to pieces by the Animen. Cecil and Donald were already beat up, especially with Donald. He was already like ripped off, and all his cyber parts were showing. And they're just like, shit, But Donald was like, I could do more out there than being here. And Cecil was like, all right, so, but yeah, all right, man, just go with Britt and give him hell, basically. But of course, he kind of wanted to say, come back alive, without saying it. Because he cares for him, obviously. He does care for him to that extent. Which is kind of nice to see. Meanwhile, there are all those other superheroes. You could get to see them. There's like that random green dude, right? But who he was fighting with some little guy, just with martial arts. And they're doing some kind of cool stuff, but then Mark just like boom, or he either pushes them or knocks them down somehow, and unfortunately the big guy falls, and then he falls on top of the little guy, and it just splat. I think that was the end of him. The little guy at least. And then there are a number of other superheroes that were fighting against Mark, but then of course there's one out in outer space. This Mark was very much more Viltrumite-esque. He had the uniform and everything. He was fighting this like space chick. And then by the end of that fight, Mark was demolished, right? Shredded, dead. And that space girl, was able to fly back in one piece. So, interesting implications of what's to come for her if they want to stretch out this character. And then so obviously there's a lot going on, a lot of fights. Some of them that you kind of see from before were dead at the end of it, unfortunately, like the Metal Knight and the big guy, right? The other big muscular dude, he got his guts ripped out, unfortunately. But then of course you have Mark, right? Fighting against the Mohawk Mark. Mark? No. Okay. Mohawk Mark was demolished in the jail, and with that, Powerplex was free. And then I guess there was another Mark, right? That was getting beat up by another set of superheroes, but they saw the real Mark, and they thought, oh, he's one of them, and then they were beating him up and stuff like that. Mark wasn't fighting back, obviously, but by the end of it, it was implied, right, that Powerplex was able to sort of like get his wish in a way. He fried the shit out of that Mark, not the Mohawk one, unfortunately, but a Mark. So he got some sort of satisfaction there. So I actually thought that they were able to, Angstrom Levy was going to somehow able to get him on his side, but with no avail. So it was one of those like paths to take. And Powerplex just hates all Marks, pretty much. Anything that reminds him of Invincible, he wants him gone. What was next? So meanwhile, there was two Invincibles, right? I think one was like a red and white one, and then there's just another one. Oh yeah, the guy, like, he had like a different mask or something, swears a lot. They're fighting against Mark and Adam Eve. And, as the fight goes on, Eve, being only quite human in durability terms, gets her leg destroyed, unfortunately. And then Mark tried to hold him off and stuff like that. And then I think that's when more superheroes came to help or something like that. There's a lot going on for sure. There's a lot going on. But yes, but by the end of it, a lot has been devastated around the world. And then Angstrom was like, all right, phase 1 is complete, right? A lot of Marks did die, yes. And there were only like, 7 left or something like that? 8, 7, 6-ish. And they all gathered at Mark's house, the Grayson's house. And then Angstrom Levy shows up fashionably late. All the Marks were kind of arguing with each other in the process. And basically, they were promised, right, that, they're going to have their dimensions and stuff like that. But Angstrom Levy was basically trying to use them to wreak havoc and, of course, get back at Mark, right? Leave a burning footprint, I guess you could say, or just a burning. It's what's the term? But anyway, like a scar, if you will, on Earth that basically it makes Mark look bad, right? Invincible, to tarnish the Invincible name, and basically all the Marks wanted to turn on Angstrom Levy already. He even says, "Oh, they turned on me a lot sooner than I hoped for," but whatever. He puts them back into that one dimension that where Mark seemingly killed Angstrom Levy, and let me say, good Lord, they did not mess around with that part either. Like, you see Angstrom Levy's face like completely destroyed, but somehow still alive. All he can do is just go, it's gross. But he somehow was still able to open up a portal and went to these technicians, right? They're surgeons, but also technicians, I guess you say. Well, he referred them as technicians because cyber parts, whatever. They were able to put him back together. But anyway, so right at that point, it was just the real Mark and Angstrom Levy. He got his wish. He wanted to get his second shot at Mark. And, they're fighting it out. Mark was not easily fooled by his portal tricks and stuff like that. And it looked like, Mark was going to go through the portal, but Oliver helped, luckily. Oliver was great. Forgot to mention, he was very, 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 very good in this one, just simply put. Very helpful. Like, now he understands more about the heroics, right? The black and white sides of being a hero, in the gray area, and maybe not so much the gray areas yet, but he will. He's already like starting to understand, and he was very helpful with the people, right? But of course, help Mark fend off against Angstrom Levy. And by that point, Mark was able to summon enough strength to get through all the drones, right? Because Angstrom Levy can only summon so much drones from different portals and dimensions. And Mark was able to pull through and have the finishing blow right at hand, right? He had the opportunity, and then Oliver's just like, do it. Take the opportunity. You have to do it now, because you killed him before, but he was still alive. So if you just leave him be, he's gonna come back more dangerous, right? He's gonna cause more harm. And Mark is starting to now accept that you have to make these sort of choices, right? At times, and sometimes you do have to get your hands dirty, simply or nicely put, right? To put it nicely, and kill him, right? He wanted to kill him then, but Angstrom Levy almost got away with it, but he took his arm, right? Which is, I guess, key to making those portals. Kind of like from The Boys, you got that one telekinesis guy, but then when Stormfront broke his hands, or just like that, no more powers. So same with Angstrom Levy, took away his hand. He can only make this a portal with his hand, maybe slower or something. But when he in the process portaled back to the technician's place, and he lost his hand in the process because Mark took it. Like, he tried to grab him back, but the portal closed on him and cut his hand. And then Oliver's like, oh, gross. But Angstrom Levy, he wanted more. He wanted to go back, but he's like, hey, fix me, whatever. Technicians, I command you to fix me. And then the technician said, no. We were promised something from you, but you failed. So how what? How can you hold your end of the bargain? How do you expect us to carry out these commands, right, or orders, if you're just gonna fail, right? Because he came back with no marks. He came back with nothing else. So it's like, how can you then trust him, right? So they, I guess, had the right to, just turn their back on him, betray him, and of course, having to build cybernetics into him, they can control him. So when he tried to portal away, nope, sorry. They inhibited his powers, and they said, you're here for our pleasure, essentially. You can either follow our orders now, right, or become an experiment for the rest of your life. So that's another nice little setup what's to come, right? Maybe the technicians have something else in mind for him. Maybe they want to also conquer the galaxies and the universes and all that stuff in their own way. And they have Ancient Levy in their hands. So that's he's fucked. So in a way, it was better to not kill him. So he's gonna have his own little personal hell. Unfortunately, he's suffering the consequences, right? Because of perhaps one Angstrom Levy's desire to kill Mark or Invincible, while everyone else wanted to just cure cancer and whatever this and that from all the other dimensions. And remember, there was that one Angstrom Levy, he was like the central one, who wanted to build an empire with no blood, right? But that's what it came down to, right? And who knows, right? Is it just that one Angstrom Levy that took over somehow? Or was it a number of them who never expressed it, but in their mind, they always wanted to kill Invincible? Who knows? But anyways, he's out of the picture for now. Who knows what'll come? And we'll see. But that was like only half of the episode, I thought, right? I think. And there was the aftermath, right? What's to come from Mark, right? Because after that, they were trying to clean up the mess. Mark was trying to help out. He was digging out for more bodies, or he was finding more bodies, and he just couldn't. He just feeling the stress of it, right? But then Powerplex found him and tried to, get his little taste of revenge. But Oliver, of course, came in. He's like, "Stop it," right? And they were able to subdue him. But Powerplex continues, right, to plant this picture in people's minds, including the superheroes, that this is all Mark's fault or Invincible's fault. So it is a lot to set up as well, right? There's a lot of setups, including now a divide possibly between those who think it was Mark's fault and those who don't, right? So who knows who knows what's going to become of that, right? And Powerplex just tries to get that out there, but then, in the end, he still has to be imprisoned, and he's just like, why is Mark still out here while someone like me has to be in jail? It's all his fault. Well, yes, in the end, people like Cecil don't see it that way. They all know he's demented, he's lost. But still, it still gets other people thinking, right? But now, so not only from Angstrom Levy, but Powerplex is doing the same almost. Two sides of the same coin. So Mark has a lot on his hands in the future. And even Cecil at one point, you know, pointed out or had a meeting with the remaining Guardians and Mark, right, or Invincible, excuse me, that they that because of Immortal and Duplicate retiring and a lot of superheroes either injured, dead, or incapacitated, and there's a lot of vulnerability, right? So they just they wanted Mark to have the leadership for the Guardians, but Mark said no, I don't want to work with you, man. With all the shit that's between Cecil and Mark, understandably. So, but meanwhile, yes, during all that in between, Mark was with Eve. Eve was hospitalized. She was resting, and Mark wanted to stay with Eve the entire time during all the chaos, right? But then, of course, with Cecil, right, talking him down and stuff like that. Hey, all of us out there, right? Your mom is out there too. You gotta get going, man. Otherwise they could be in danger too. So, but not before Mark meeting Eve's parents. And there was this like weird thing. Of course, the dad is still an asshole. Like that's just kind of the person he is. But the mom was just, what was that, right? What is the implication of that? What was the point that she was trying to get across? And of course, it was interrupted. I think before Mark had to leave or whatever. But Eve's mom, right? It's because they're adoptive parents, pretty much. For those who know, they from the Adam Eve special. The mom was like, oh, there was this friend that Eve was friends with, right, from childhood, but they did kind of drifted off. But then on TV, I saw her dead, and so it's ironic that she's dead, but she's alive, but Eve is alive. So I don't know where it was going with that. Like, am I missing something? Like, was there supposed to be some sort of like punchline or whatever? Because she was like, oh, I find it funny or ironic or blah, 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 or whatever. I don't know. It's like, is it trying to reveal that these people are just bad in their own way? Like, the dad is like, yeah, he's bad. Like, you've come to expect that. But the mom is also like messed up in the way. It's just weird, right? So there's something weird going on with Eve's parents. Is there more than meets the eye? But anyway, very, very strange. I don't know what's going on with that. But yes, anyway, pretty much by then, like skipping back to one part. At one point, yeah, you can. I forgot about Donald. Donald and Britt, they were fighting, and you see you see Donald all messed up, but yeah, he's still alive, thankfully. He got fixed, I think. And Britt was kind of just there. Like, you don't really get to see him, unfortunately, do much other than yes, he's the leader of these groups of people or whatever, but that's about it. Oh yeah, and he's able to subdue Powerplex. That's pretty much it. So hopefully we get to see more of Britt in the future. I feel like they want him to be featured more, right? The writers. We'll see. What else happened? So there was Debbie at Paul's house, and they were lucky, right, that their area didn't get touched. William and Rick, I think his name was, the boyfriend, got to see him in action. He was able to use his body to help save Will, right, from the dangers, right. Now he's making what he got to do what he can. So now he's making good out of it, right? Because obviously, yeah, that whole experience is very traumatic, right? Because he was experimented on. But But now that he has this body, he has the ability to do these things. So he's making the best out of it by, well, of course, saving William, his boyfriend, from these dangers, right? That's good, right? It's the best possible way for him to cope with it, right? I think that's pretty much it for all the areas that were hit, right? Oh yeah, and there's like that little Easter egg with the mummy, the misogynistic mummy. Oh, I can only take over male bodies or something. And the two female explorers, right? They're a couple. Were now free because the mummy was trying to possess Mark, but he couldn't do it outside the tomb or something like that. So it didn't quite work. Well, one of the marks didn't quite work. And he's like, no! So he's like forever cursed. And it goes back to his his coffin, I think. And one of the explorers was carrying the other. And she's like, you're going to be okay. You're fine. I got you. I got you. They were finally free. But somehow she was okay, but the other one was drained. Whatever. It was weird. Very strange. Maybe, I don't know, they were held prisoner and then he was trying to drain them. I don't know. Starting to drain them. Whatever the case may be. So it was a nice little callback from, I think it was season 1, right? So that was pretty cool, or funny at least. That was like one little bits of humor that was like to reset the palate. Okay. So then, oh yeah. So after the meeting between Cecil and the remaining Guardians, and Invincible walked out. Cecil said, "I'll walk you out," and then Cecil, tried to, say like, hey, we know we have our differences, but if you ever need any help, you can call me, right? Just to let him know, hey, like, I know shit was between us, but, I'll still be willing to help you out. And, hey, we're both superheroes, or we're both trying to save the world, And seemingly like at this point, Mark is starting to get it, right? He's starting to understand because, he had no choice but to try to kill Angstrom Levy. It's time that you gotta throw out these like soft spots and try to understand that the world isn't so black and white. There's a lot of gray to it, right? Just like what Cecil said with the demon, right? I forgot his name. It's something like it was from season 1. I forgot his like actual name or whatever. But anyway, the demon detective only sees black and white. That stuff, kind of like a callback ish. It's a very indirect one. Maybe I could be reaching, but anyway. When Cecil said, "Yeah, hey, you can call me if you need help," Mark says, "You're the last person I ever want to talk to, right?" But he thanks him for it, right? So it's a sign that this relationship is healing slowly, but it's looking promising. They'll be on friendly terms eventually, from what's being implied here. And then Mark is like helping out, cleaning up the mess, whatever, right? Lastly, right, the very last moment, I would say, I'm pretty sure I'm like forgetting some other parts, but this part though, definitely not. This is the first appearance, just out of nowhere, for Conquest. Conquest is, of course, obviously a Viltrumite, but he's that old veteran. He was one of the surviving Viltrumites from the Great Civil War. So he's like obviously one of the strongest ones, if not the second strongest one. There's one other one who was part of the council, and I believe he's the strongest. And his name is Thrag, and he's like the current emperor of the current Viltrumite Empire. And of course, he's the strongest one. In Conquest, I believe he's like the right hand man or the second strongest one. So this guy has got a lot going. And so he's got the battle scars, he's got the robot hand. Like this, you can already tell he doesn't mess around. And Mark was like, "Man, you caught me at a bad time, man. You know, Conquest is here. It's like, what is this? You're supposed to set up the Earth for the Viltrumite takeover, right? But you didn't do your assignment." And then Mark was like, "I really feel like I really feel like hitting something right now." And then, boom, episode over. You know. So that's essentially that. So it really leaves a nice little cliffhanger of what's to come for the last season, for season 3. Episode 8, man, it's gonna be next week. I can't wait. So, there's just like it was very interesting to see at least with all the different marks, right? But overall, I wish for a couple more ranges, right? There's obviously there was one that was a little more sympathetic. You know, he loved his mom, but either she died or something happened, right? And that Mark was like the good guy of the group. So who knows what that Mark will do, right? Or hell, the rest of the Marks. What's going to be of them? Besides being trapped in that one dimension, will they team up to fight the other Viltrumites or join the Viltrumites? That's a question for another time, right? Hopefully, a possibility that we'll see at least 2 paths. So we gotta wait. But yeah, it's gonna be pretty interesting to see of what's to come for episode 8 and of course beyond, right? How else they're gonna cover the rest of the Invincible storyline? Because they already went through Rex's death, so I didn't think it would come up that soon. But I don't know if in the comics it was that soon as well, around that same time, right? But I don't know. We'll see if they follow through with that. So, anyways, that's all I got for this spoiler dump. What do you guys think? Are you looking forward to Conquest? Do you think he's pretty badass or anything like that? Leave it down below, and I love to read them. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, because it really helps out, and I do appreciate it, guys. So this has been the spoiler dump for Invincible season 3, episode 7. You know I'm gonna be talking about episode 8, man. I just can't wait. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Sean out.